The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. The sky is so rich and blue, hardly a cloud in the sky, and the sun is so bright and shiny, and I am so happy. And you know why? Because here I am in Ohio, and I'm free. I'm free. And I owe it all to Mr. Nelson T. Gant. Why, I remember when I first laid eyes on that man. It was at church. Winifred and I were standing outside of the church, and I looked up the path and saw this sort of lanky-looking fella coming. And all of a sudden, Winifred grabbed my arm and she took me right up to him. And she said, "I want you to meet my cousin, Mr. Nelson Talbert Gant." I said, "Well, hello, Mr. Nelson." And then he reached out and grabbed my hand and he kissed it. Oh my, what a gentleman. Well, church was about ready to start, so Winifred and I ran inside to find our seats. And no sooner had I sat down, I looked behind me and there was Nelson sitting right behind me, just a-smiling. Well, that's how it all got started. Nelson and I grew quite fond of each other. And you know, since those days, we've had some wonderful, beautiful times together, but we've had some difficult times too. One Sunday morning, Nelson came running up to me at church. He was so excited. He said, "Anna, would you marry me?" Oh, my heart just leaped for joy. I said, "Nelson, I have to think about it." Well, the next Sunday, Nelson came up to me again. He said, "Well?" I said, "Well, what?" I told him I was still thinking about it. Winifred said I was foolish. I knew I loved this man. Why did I say that? Well, the next Sunday, Nelson came up to me and he just stood there, just looking. I said, "Nelson, now tell me, how is it that we're going to be married when you're at the Woodburn estate with Mr. Nixon and I'm here in Leesburg with Miss Russell?" Well, he said he had that all figured out. And sure enough, Nelson was always full of ideas. A few days later, he showed up at Miss Russell's to ask for my hand in marriage. And Miss Russell told him that he wasn't good enough for me. I was so disappointed. I wanted so much to be with Nelson. I guess Nelson was disappointed too, because he didn't show up for church for the next several Sundays. And then one Sunday he came running in and he said, "Anna, we're going to get married." He said he had spoken to Pastor Gover, and Pastor Gover said he was going to marry us. Oh, we were so happy. And Nelson and I got married. But it was a bitter joy because Nelson was still at the Woodburn estate and I was still here in Leesburg. It seemed like we hardly ever saw each other. And then one Sunday morning, Nelson told me that Mr. Nixon had died. I was sorry to hear that. Mr. Nixon was a good man. And then Nelson told me that he was going to be free. He said that in Mr. Nixon's will, it stated that upon his death, all his slaves would be set free. Nelson was going to be free. Oh, I was so happy. But now he would be free. Why, he could go off to New York or that place, Pennsylvania, find some little pretty thing and forget all about me. But no, Nelson was a man of integrity. He said that he was going to stay in Virginia and find a job, work hard, save money, and buy my freedom. Oh, that was so special. Now that's love. But I knew that it would be no easy task. You see, there was a law in Virginia that said that once a slave is set free, that person could stay in Virginia only 1 year, and then he would have to leave. Otherwise, risk being fined or put in jail, or maybe even enslaved again. Nelson would have just 1 year to find a job, save money, to buy my freedom. Now, how is that possible? You all know how hard it is to save. But Nelson did get a job. He found a job cutting wood down by the Potomac River. And when the year was about up, why, he came a-calling on Miss Russell. Nelson did stay in Virginia for a whole year, cutting wood down by the Potomac River and saving up money to buy my freedom. And when the year was almost up, why, Nelson came calling on Miss Russell. And I was so thrilled because he had a whole bunch of money. Why, he came to Miss Russell's and he showed her the money, and she looked at the money, and then she looked at Nelson, and then she looked at the money again, and she laughed. She laughed. She said, it wasn't enough money. It wasn't enough money. The disappointment on Nelson's face was just too much to bear. I could not even look at him. He had cuts and bruises and calluses all over him from working so hard. And she said it wasn't enough money after he worked all year long. All the dreams and the hope that I held on to all year long was just shattered with her words. It wasn't enough money. The tears welled up in my eyes. But I would not let Miss Russell see my hurt. And then she said, Anna, would you fix me dinner? And I tried my best to offer up a smile. And I said, yes, ma'am.
all the while taking deep breaths to calm myself. Mama told me don't hope. What do slaves have to hope for? Slaves can't hope. But I thought this would be different. We were so in love. All my dreams were just shattered. Nelson would have to leave Virginia. But he told Miss Russell, he looked at her straight in the eye and told her, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm coming back for my Anna. And then Nelson left.
Soon after Nelson left, Miss Russell hired me out to Mr. Estridge. His health was failing, and so he needed someone to run errands for him. I had the opportunity to go all over town delivering messages for Mr. Estridge. My days were filled with running errands and doing different chores for Mr. Estridge, but my nights were filled with heartache. I miss Nelson so much. One cool morning, I was on my way to Mr. Tompkins' house, and I saw George, and he ran up to me.
Meet Nelson down by the river at midnight.
Oh, my heart stopped. I couldn't believe it. Nelson is here. I just wanted to shout for joy, but I dared not. I just continued on to Mr. Tompkins' house as though nothing ever happened. That night, I sneaked out of Mr. Estridge's house and I made my way down to the river. I was so scared. What if George just made this up? No. What if we both get caught? I see a figure. Oh, please be Nelson. Please be Nelson. Please be Nelson. It was. It's Nelson. It's Nelson. Just before dawn, we came to this house, and the people were expecting us. And we stayed there all during the day. Then at night, we took off by foot, and we walked, and we walked, and we walked. And finally, we were in Washington, D.C. Nelson knew so much about Washington, D.C. Why, he told me that back in 1807, the first school for free colored folks was opened. Imagine that, a school for colored folks. And then he told me that Washington, D.C. was like a place of refuge for runaway slaves like me. I can see why it would be a place of refuge. Why, there were colored folks all over the place. There were bricklayers and carpenters, businessmen. This was too good to be true. Well, it was too good to be true. After several days, some officials came to arrest us. Nelson and I were placed in jail.